All right, Marco Palmero, founder of Ulysses in Dubai. In this video, I will discuss with you 9 fears small business owners face when they're in the process of selling their business. And as I'm sure you know, if you watched other videos on this channel, we generally talk about small business acquisitions and buying small businesses. So why is it that I want to talk about the selling side in this particular case? Well, because in many other instances, I discussed the importance of discussing and analyzing the seller's motivation for exiting a particular investment, and I believe all that comes down to some basic fears and or worries that this person might have. And so motivation and fears generally go toe to toe, and if you can understand both, then you're going to have a much easier time negotiating with this person. Of course, you're still going to need to get the deal done, but these elements will greatly accelerate the process of closing a deal and will put you in a driver's seat, so to speak. So I'm going to be sharing what I found to be the 9 fears that most small business owners face throughout the process of selling a small business. I'm going to be sharing my personal experience and the feedback I collected after talking with really thousands of sellers across UAE, Middle East, and in other parts of the world as well. So I got my little list going so that I make sure I don't forget any of these aspects that I noted down. The first one is loss of purpose. So when somebody like a small business owner is in the process of selling a company, chances are he's going to be selling a business that he built over 20, 30, 40 years. And this is going to be like a baby for him, right? So there's going to be a lot of emotional attachment to that particular entity. And the owner is going to be worried about the fact that he might lose his purpose after the business gets sold, because he's going to think, well, what I'm going to do with my days, what I'm going to do with my time now that I don't have a business to run anymore. Now, not all owners think about it this way. In some instances, people that might want to enjoy retirement will not be worried about this problem at all. But I saw a lot of times people do care about their next phase in life, and they're worried that they're going to lose purpose and not know what they're going to do with their time. That's why I believe strongly in a transition period, because it's also a way to mitigate this particular worry for the owner. So offering them to stay for 12, 24 months, give them a little bit of continuity, and then have the time to decide what they're going to do in the next phase of their life. So loss of purpose is a major fear that these small business owners face. In addition, if we want to step to number 2, there's the loss of social status in the community. Now, small business owners generally provide services or products to a local community, right? It might be the local city, a part of town where they live. And selling this particular business will make them lose all the status they built over time, because they will not look at them as, the doctor or the dentist or the baker that was providing with such a good service. They're gonna lose that kind of image in front of their community, and that might be a concern for some people. Some of you watching this video might think this is kind of stupid thing, but in reality it is not, because people place a lot of value on their social status and reputation, especially in countries like the UAE and Middle East. And so that is a very relevant issue that it is important to address and also reassure in terms of making sure the other person knows that when you buy a business, you're not going to destroy it, so that he at least knows that his reputation that is in the business is going to be kept as it was. Then, of course, he will still need to get over the fact that he's not going to be the main guy anymore. But that is just part of the process, right? Part of the transition. If he really wants to sell this thing, it is something he will need to get used to. And, he can start something else, pursue other interests in life, and do other types of businesses if he's really interested to maintaining that kind of image in the community. Now, The third fear is a lack of confidentiality. This is a problem that happens when owners do spread the information, and they kind of like share with too many people the fact that they're in the process of selling the business. This may kill confidentiality, because when they share confidential stuff with the wrong parties, they might see the information of their business being circulated amongst hundreds of people, really. So if they share it, for example, with brokers or with people that are not trustworthy, they might see that the confidentiality of their business is completely destroyed. That's why I believe working one-on-one with the seller is mandatory, because then you can also protect his confidentiality by just having a one-on-one interaction and using the documents only to make an assessment for your own selfish reasons. So deciding whether or not you want to buy. And this, I've seen in my experience, gives the owner a lot of reassurance, because knowing that you're just looking at the business for your own interest is going to make them feel, okay, this person is not going to take this info and just send it to hundreds of people and make my business like an open book. But they're just going to look at the data. If it makes sense for them, they're going to proceed. If not, they're just going to move on, and that's going to be it. I think that is a really important concept that you want to bring across, and that I always want to bring across when I initiate an interaction, because it gives the other side a lot of comfort, in this sort of confidentiality thing. Now, on point number 4, we have something that I mentioned already, but it is important to crystallize this. The fact that the business might be disrupted under new management, right? A lot of people are worried, a lot of owners are worried that the business they built over 20, 30, 40 years might be disrupted by new management, because they might change stuff that can completely mess up the operations and so on and so forth. This is another reason why I like to retain them for a certain amount of time, not only because it gives us as buyers that extra level of stability in managing the transition, but also shows the seller that we are not messing anything around, and that we are experts at what we do. So they get that level of comfort, and we also get that kind of protection in a transition. So it's a win-win for both sides. Because again, if you build a business over 20, 30, 40 years, you also have some sort of interest in making sure that business is not going to be destroyed by the new buyer, right? And that is a fair point. So making sure that is clearly understood will greatly improve your chances of having a productive discussion. At least that's what I found. Now, kind of like tied to this, we have point number 5, fear number 5 in this case, which is the care of employees. Now, in total frankness, I haven't seen all owners to care about this, because a lot of people play the game philosophically, saying they care about the people they build, they bring into the company, they have a very strong family. But the moment you talk about money, they're not going to give a fuck, to be honest with you, about the people they brought in as employees. Now, that is not the case for all people, but for a few of them, it's going to be very, very important, right, to make sure the people that work with them for a long time are taken care of. And I respect that tremendously. And one of the reasons why we believe in keeping people on board is exactly that. We do want to make sure that the people who build that business to a certain level are still part of the business under new management. I think that is very, very important thing, because they are the ones who understand the business dynamics better than anybody, because they're the ones in the trenches every single day. So I believe in employee retention, but it is important to get that point across with the seller, because words are just words, and it is mandatory to show that after the business starts the transition, right? So this is a common fear that most small business owners might have. Number 6 is tax liability. I put it in there despite the fact in UAE there's no kind of issue from a tax liability standpoint. But I've seen that happening in the US, for example, where there was a huge problem for tax liabilities after a deal like this. around capital gains and stuff like that. So that might be an issue for the owner, a fear that they're going to pay a huge amount of tax once they sell the business. And that's one of the reasons why deferring a lot of the payments in installments is going to kind of like amortize that tax liability that it might need to pay. And that's one of the reasons why I believe in deferred payments in most small business acquisitions, because it gives the other side peace of mind, and the seller will not have to face a huge tax liability up front, after closing. Then number 7, it's kind of obvious to say, but making mistakes during the sale process. That's, of course, one of the biggest fears of all small business owners. In most cases, it is the first time they're selling a business, so they don't know, how to handle the process. They're afraid they're going to make a mistake, that the other side is going to take advantage of them. And from that perspective, I strongly believe that, sellers should retain counsel, and I always advise them to do so. We prefer, the relationship to be that way because it streamlines the interactions and it makes sure both sides are, protected in the transaction. Many people would try to do everything by themselves, and that may lead to mistakes and problems, especially if you're dealing with the wrong buyer that will take advantage of that. Okay, I've seen that happening many times, and it isn't something we feel passionate about, right? We would like both sides to always feel protected throughout the transaction, play the game fairly, and then make sure we can get a deal done. So it's a big fear that owners have, and frankly, I do understand it. And sometimes they refrain from hiring counsel because they don't want to pay a couple extra thousands, but they don't realize that extra $1,000 is going to save them hundreds of thousands in mistakes along the way. And so this is a point that I really stress every single time I have an interaction with a seller. Are you having some sort of legal or accounting counsel for this particular deal? Because I think it will be important, and we would want you to have some. So I always like to bring that up at every discussion, because it will facilitate the process for both sides. Now, number 8 is financial security post-acquisition. A lot of people will realize that selling the business is a way for them to cash in. They can cash in right away, or they can cash in installments. The point is they're going to cash in some way. A lot of them are going to be worried that that's not going to be enough, because they got used to the fact that this business was there for them and that they were taking whatever amount of money they were taking out of the business. But they had in their minds a sort of reassurance that the business was there, and independently of how much money they were taking out of it, the point is they were still taking something, and the business always provided for them in some way. Now they're worried that selling this will not give them that stability and the lifestyle that they wanted. This is by far one of the reasons why I stress the idea of having some sort of deferred payment, because that creates a lot of security for the seller, right? He might not be able to manage a huge payment up front, and taking it out in installments will give them a lot of mental security in thinking, okay, I'm going to get these types of payments. It's almost like keeping the business, but getting payments that are a little bit high compared to what I was getting before. And so I think that is psychologically also a very good solution for people who want to make sure they have that kind of stability over time. And it is the whole concept, people who win the lottery are and cash everything up front. They end up spending everything in 2-3 years. Instead, if they take it out and as installments, they wind up becoming very rich. And that's one of the things that I believe helps people realize that they can substantially close the deal for a certain amount of money, but then take it out as an installment payment, which greatly enhances the peace of mind that they're going to get, throughout the years. They're still going to get the same amount of money, but what they're going to benefit from is this stability of knowing, okay, I'm going to get checks every month, and I'm not going to need to worry about managing all this capital that I got and messing up the situation in some way. Number 9, and last one, is fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown is kind of like a gray thing, But it is nevertheless true that most small business owners fear the unknown when they sell their business. A lot of the elements that I just mentioned are just fear of the unknown, are a process that people never went through. And as a consequence, they are afraid of something that they're not accustomed to. This is just human nature from my perspective. I believe that as cavemans, we used to be afraid of everything we didn't know because we could die, right? It could be a threat that animal that could kill us. And so we used to be afraid, and we used to develop that type of fear for what we don't know. Same thing applies for the small business owners. They're afraid of things they don't know, and that's why guiding them through the process and making them understand how everything works is mandatory from my perspective. And it helps really once you understand both the motivation and the fears they have, because then you can direct them in the right way and make sure both sides can get what they want out of this deal. So in summary, what are the 9 fears I've identified as being the major ones for small business owners selling their business? First, loss of purpose. Second, loss of social status in the community. Third, no confidentiality throughout the process. Fourth, business being mismanaged by the new owners. Fifth, employee care of some sort. Sixth, tax liability. Seventh, making mistakes during the sale process. Eighth, financial security post-acquisition. And then ninth, the fear of the unknown. Of course, there might be many others. These are the 9 that I found to be most relevant to the discussions that I had in the past. If you find out more, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.